Hey everybody, welcome to episode 105 of Tuesdays with Perry for this special Wednesday edition of Tuesdays with Perry. Let's see if we can't get Perry on the line. Tonight we're going to be discussing all things Trump. It's only been like 24 days. It seems like it's been a year already. And we're going to talk about Doge and the Democrats' response to what's going on in Washington. So let's see if we can't get Perry on the line.
Hello.
Hey Perry, welcome to episode 105. How are you doing this evening?
Rudy, it is wonderful to be an American again.
It's been it's 3 weeks already. It's hard to believe. My head is still spinning.
3 weeks and 2 days.
Wow, we're in for some treats. Okay, so breaking news today, Tulsi Gabbard, and I didn't see it on any of the news, so it's like I didn't get any headlines, no alerts that she got confirmed. Because
any good news for Tulsi is bad news for the news media.
You could say that again. So she was confirmed. So I didn't get any alerts. I didn't see it on the news, but she has been confirmed. And there's a lot of other stuff going on. Particularly, people are interested in what Doge is doing. And it seems like the electorate is cheering on Trump and Elon Musk, and the Democrats can't get out of their own way.
You know, your point is spot on, but here's what's most incredible and something that we really need to start taking note of. His biggest support group happens to be the Gen Zers.
Yeah.
All of these young kids, my son's age, they're crazy about Trump. Crazy about him. They love what is happening. They love Elon. They love everything that's going on right now in the government, and they are grateful for it. And I never saw this coming.
Right. I think it was Barron. Barron got apparently got Trump on the youth train, and they started memeing Trump dancing around, and he became an icon with the younger set. It was unbelievable, and the transformation actually happened quickly on the campaign trail. And now that you can't do that with anybody else. Trump has become an icon with the young people, and Elon Musk already was. And so you put those two together, they're like the dynamic duo.
Well, to take a marketing 101, and to throw this in a different direction, it's about branding and brand loyalty. And between the ages of 18, 29, that group of consumers is open to changing their loyalty and as to what drink they like, what food they eat, what restaurants they go to. But by the time people reach age, I want to say 45, maybe 50, you're set in your ways. So what Trump is doing goes far beyond his presidency, far beyond. If the Republican Party is smart enough to continue the direction that he has now embarked on in the past year, because this didn't start on January 20th. This started 6 months before the election. in order to capture the younger generation. The younger generation, two things about the young generation, whether you're talking about us when we were in our late teens and early 20s, or whether you're talking about the teenagers of 18 to, let's say, 29 today, they are very vocal in their opinion, good or bad, but they have rarely shown up at the voting booth. They did this time, and they voted Republican.
Right.
So Trump has rebranded the Republican Party. And if the Republicans are smart enough to follow the lead he now has us behind, you will now have the next 2, maybe 3 generations that will make the Republican Party not just the majority party, because quite frankly, the majority is only as good as the candidates they put up at every 2 years.
Right.
But no longer will the Democrats be able to say they speak for the common man. They no longer do. And that point is made by how stupid every one of them, whether it's Schmucky Chucky or whether it's Maxine Waters pointing her bony little finger in the face of the bureaucrat who had to stand outside the Department of Education yesterday. Whoever they are looking like absolute incompetent buffoons.
Right.
And that is all because of Trump.
Right. And the funny thing is also is that the young people, and through this old Doge exercise, people are learning about conservatism. You know, that the fact
That's
is
right.
we don't have to spend all this money. And spending all this money is actually what got us into this mess in the first place. And I have to hand it, I don't know if you saw the press conference about Doge with Elon Musk in the Oval Office, and he laid it right out there. He said, look, our debt service annually is as much, if not more, than the whole annual budget of the Pentagon. And if somebody was watching that and didn't know that, that's a wake-up call. And so that will certainly get people interested on where we can kind of trim the fat, so to speak.
That's right. And when you look at, again, going back to the reaction of the Democrats, and I had this conversation with my wife in the past hour while we were watching Jesse. Why are the Democrats so scalding mad? Because their cookie jar is being taken away from them. It's not that the cookie jar is empty. They can't have any more cookies that are in the jar. And that's what they're upset about. I have been saying for at least the last 20 years, the only reason why someone wants to hold a seat in the United States Congress, whether it's the upper or lower house, the only reason is to feather their nest, nothing else. I've said that about Republicans and Democrats alike. There is no reason why someone should think they are entitled in their 70s, their 80s. Hell, Strom Thurmond was, 96 when he finally kicked the bucket? There is no reason why anyone wants to be away from their family that much unless it means they are getting filthy rich. And that's something that came up today.
Right.
That came up with regard to all this, and Trump said it himself. Somebody's getting rich. There's no way there can't be fraud, and we're going to find who's getting rich. And that's what's scaring the Democrats.
And they're going to be prosecuted because if it's not the politicians themselves, it's their donors. Because the donors tell the politicians to funnel the money in this direction to this NGO, and they do it. They might be getting kickbacks, and Trump and Musk both use the word kickback, which could be accurate.
Yeah.
If you funnel money to your donor's company or your donor's NGO, and then they contribute to your campaign $1 million, that is indeed the kickback. So the scheme is, that sort of scheme is certainly not not that strange.
Right. Or in the case of my former congressman, and I've mentioned his name and this example twice over the last 2.5 years. You've had me on your podcast, John Micah, who was already a multi-millionaire when he first ran for office. My wife and I both grassroots worked on his campaign to get him elected in 1992. He made his money in development. I don't consider development a dirty industry whatsoever. But he ran down the throats of Central Florida taxpayers this stupid commuter rail that loses money every year. And the way he sold it to us, nobody wanted it, because no matter what model they came up with, it never even broke even. So the taxpayers of Central Florida said no, not once, 3 times. When he couldn't get them to take it, he went behind the backs of the voters, went to the Board of County Commissioners in each one of the 4 counties, starting with Volusia and ending down in Osceola, and paid them off somehow. I don't know how, but got them. The only way you can get local politicians to vote against the will of their people is to make it worth their while somehow. And
Right.
It ain't by simply having a picture taken with a U.S. congressman.
Yeah.
And so the Board of County Commissioners in each one of the counties passed it. We're stuck with this. And here's the thing. From Volusia County all the way down to Osceola, commercial real estate got rezoned, and there were several groups of developers who got their hands on all of this property in each one of the counties so that they could build multi-use, multi-family complexes right at the train station, not right on top of it, but within 3 blocks. So it was literally an ability for people to get on the train. If they worked in downtown Orlando, they could hop on board for probably $5 round trip. They could take the train and avoid having to drive their car and sit in traffic and yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. Every one of those developers were his circle of friends.
Right.
So how do you think John got paid?
Yeah.
That's how he got paid.
The money finds its way back. There's no doubt about that.
Always does.
Right. That's how the whole scam works. And it's been working and been this way. It's the status quo, the way things have been operating for some time. So I think
Correct.
that time is over. I think the gravy train is over. And so I think that's why the Democrats have been enlisted to fight harder. But I think the train, that train has left the station.
Yeah, they just don't know that yet. And that's fine. I said to you and to your viewers 3 months ago, when Trump won on November 5th, we have 18 months, not 2 years, not 4 years. We have 18 months to get all the heavy lifting done, because we have to be able to not only turn this Nimitz-class aircraft carrier 180 degrees from the course it was currently on. We have to be able to explain by example and by proof positive that the changes made are making a difference in the lives of every individual average American, in order to not only maintain control over the House and Senate, but to expand our power by gaining more members in both the House and Senate in 2 years. And the best way to do it is the way Trump is going about this.
Yeah, and I think that will exactly be the case, because once you show people the waste and the fraud and you pin it on your enemies that they, in fact, were benefiting from it, and we're just here exposing it, transparency, and you start digging into 9/11 and JFK and the graft that's been going on and all the nasty business of the United States federal government, he's gonna.
That's right.
And if you do that in 16 months, by the time the midterms come around, the Democrats will be effectively finished for the next 8 to 12 years.
Or better.
Or better.
Because they have not, right, they have not woken up from this nightmare they've been in since November 5th. And that's what I've been hoping for.
Yeah.
Continue to do this, continue, and if you watch what the smart politicos like James Carville have been saying to them, wake up. Nobody cares about you. Nobody cares about you screaming about Doge. Do something. Show the people what you're willing to do. Coming out, it's just like when it comes to any election. You don't win an election by telling the electorate, don't vote for my opponent, he's a bad guy or bad gal. You get people to vote for you by telling them what you're going to do for them. They've forgotten that.
Yeah.
And because they've forgotten that, and because the cookie jar has now been taken away from them, and because they're all scared, and rightfully so, that they're going to be exposed for the grifters that they are, and that's coming. It doesn't happen right away. I don't expect to see it until maybe, if we're lucky, maybe before the holidays, when some of these people, starting with the Biden family, and then going on down to Obama and then Clinton, we don't have to arrest them and put them in jail. I said before, we can try them as unindicted co-conspirators. Let the people see what these people did, and let the people of the country decide what they think of those people. They're out of power now. It doesn't matter. I don't care about them anymore. I just want the American people to know all the bullshit that you were fed for the last 33 years, going back to 92. All the bullshit that you were fed. These people became enriched through those lies at your loss, not theirs.
Right.
And that's all I want the American people to know.
Right. The country's lost because you won't have to do anything legally to these people because the electorate will clamor for it if the case is correct.
Mm-hmm.
And even if they don't clamor for it, then you don't. And you don't have to worry about
That's
it.
Right.
If the electorate says, yeah, we figured they were all crooked, we knew they were crooked, and so this just proves our point, but let's move on. Maybe
Correct.
Maybe the citizenry of the United States, the electorate, is more interested in just moving on. And so and then
right.
people like Clapper and Clinton, they'll just wither on the vine. And so will Letitia James. Now, I don't know if you heard this. Pam Bondi has brought investigations into New York Governor Kathy Hochul and Letitia James and some other knucklehead Democrat who works, I guess, for the DMV, because it's the motor voter. And the New York Post just reported that they're trying again to get illegal aliens and non-citizens to vote in New York.
That's right. And look, that's what this whole game that they've been playing on the American people for the past 4 decades is all about. It has been replacement theory politics. They've been doing this since the 1980s. Clinton took it to the next level with coming out. And again, like I said when we had this conversation months ago with regard to the 1993 motor voter law, the Republican Party sat on its hands, shrugged its shoulders, and did nothing. And so once they were able to get, not forget whether or not motor voter would allow illegal aliens the opportunity to vote in elections, that wasn't as important to the Democrats as being able to count all of these new license holders for motor vehicles as residents of their cities and states. So when reapportionment came every 10 years, they got more money from Uncle Sam because they could show, well, there's more people living here. It didn't matter whether they were a citizen or not. That justified them getting not only more money, but more seats in Congress.
Yeah. I spoke about...
And now, go ahead.
No, I just said I spoke about that this morning, and they shouldn't be apportioned. They shouldn't be part of the census. And
right,
particularly is that most states, if they allow non-citizens to vote in municipal or state elections, most states, except for Arizona, don't have any way to parse those people out in federal elections. So,
well, that's what people like you and I have been screaming about for 3 decades.
Right. And they say, oh, well, non-citizens voting in federal elections is illegal. How is that?
Hello, Maggie Brennan.
Yeah, right. How is that gonna stop people from doing that? Law is only as good.
Do they have different color? Do they have different color ballots?
Yeah.
No. That would be no.
No.
Do they have right?
There's no way. There's no when they look down the voter roll, there's not anything that denotes that person is a non-citizen. They just allow them on the voter roll, and there's no exception during the federal election. So there's no way to know. And a law is only as good as its enforcement. And so if there's no enforcement to get non-citizens off the federal rolls, then they're going to vote in federal elections, and no one's going to know. No one's going to be the wiser.
A perfect example of that is prior to the decriminalization of marijuana, you and I, when we were in our teens and mid-20s, if we went to a concert at Shea Stadium or Madison Square Garden, there was the wafty smell of Mary Jane. Did anybody, whether it was an usher or a cop of New York City, come down and tell someone who was doing a doobie, come with me, you're under arrest?
Yeah.
It never happened.
Right.
It never happened. So like you say, what good is a law if it's not enforced?
Yeah,
AKA our nightmare on the border that has finally been put to rest.
And that's, and that got actually worse during COVID, where they were signing up everybody. And I witnessed even in this most recent election in my state, in my city's register of voters, that there were people that were obviously foreigners that were there. And he was asking people, if you're a citizen. I don't even know if they understood the question, but he certainly didn't ask for verification.
Correct. Again, who does that, meaning what type of politician, what type of political philosophy does such non-action help? Well, we already know the answer. And so the important thing, bringing this full circle, is it's a new day. We've entered the golden era, and I'm just looking forward to what Trump does tomorrow. But as far as what happened today, I loved what Pam Bondi did. She's put every woke mayor and governor. You hear that, Pritzker? We're coming for you.
Yeah.
Every one of them on notice.
Yeah, for sure. Let's switch gears, though. There's a lot to talk about. So I want to talk about ICE. Apparently, I reported this week that the mayor of Los Angeles admitted that 10% of all Los Angelinos are illegal immigrants. So I want to talk about Tom Homan, sanctuary cities, sanctuary states, and the war against that. But there's a lot more to talk about. There is the Hamas hostage release that's supposed to happen on Saturday. There is the talk of President Trump said he spoke with Putin, and they're trying to arrange 3 summits, one in Saudi Arabia, one in Russia, and one in the United States. And the talk is, and I can't believe I hear people talking about this still. The talk is Russia wants to keep their buffer zone and Crimea and doesn't want NATO doesn't want Ukraine to join NATO, because these were the talking points that drove the invasion to begin with. And you have pundits,
Correct.
talking about no one can deny that there was a blatant invasion by Russia, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. These remind me of the same people that talk about school shootings or mass shootings with no motive. Are you going to tell
And
me?
we still don't know of any motive of any of these
Right,
heinous acts
right. And so
to this day.
we don't have a motive for Putin and Russia to invade Ukraine, which was going to be seen by the world as obviously belligerent. There's no. You mean to tell me there's no motive? Are we going to go back to Vladimir Putin wants to reconstitute the Soviet Union? I mean, where do these people think we went to school? I mean, we're just reading basic history, at least back to 91, not 1 inch further east.
Well, the scary part is that they know exactly where everybody in this country went to school. And that's the reason why they continue to perpetuate this lie. It's because they know the average American does not know not only the ancient or modern day history of Russia, they don't even understand the connections between Russia. I'm talking about from a historical perspective. They don't even understand the connection between Russia and Ukraine.
Right.
Now, the Ukrainians don't want, for the most part, don't want to be part of Russia. That was understood in 1994. And during the summit between Yeltsin, Clinton, there was one other member of the international leadership that was also part of this. I don't remember who now.
Probably Tony Blair.
Thank you. It was Tony Blair. Thank you. And it was understood that in order for Ukraine to be independent, they would have to give up their nuclear arsenal, which technically belonged to the Russian, what is now known as the Russian Federation.
Right.
In order for them to be willing to give up their nuclear warheads, they wanted a guarantee that their independence would never be challenged, primarily and really only by Russia. And Russia said, you must remain independent and we must have an open border with you. And we have no desire, if that happens, we have no desire to ever pick up arms against you. And so it was agreed upon that this is how we are going to move forward in the international community. Ukraine will become its own independent country, separate from the Russian Federation, but remain in that orb, so to speak. And that worked out fine for about 20 years. And I don't know if it was under Bush 43 or if it was under Obama, maybe both. All of a sudden, Ukraine not only wanted to be part of the EU for obvious economic purposes, that makes sense, but it also wanted to become part of NATO. And Putin said, that's not going to happen.
A non-starter, yep.
It's a red line. It's not going to happen. And somewhere in the last 20 years, we've gone from what the original peace treaty, well, it wasn't a peace treaty, but it was a treaty. From that agreement to suddenly saying, as recently as 2024, under Uncle Joe, his own words, Ukraine will eventually be part of NATO. You can't do that to Russia. And you and I have had this conversation more than once, so I don't want to digress too much into it. But the comparison is, well, what if China had its way with Mexico? Do we want to have Chinese troops on our southern border?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Or listening posts or missiles or,
Right.
right. It doesn't really matter. It's that the fact that they're there. And we also I have to add as a caveat, or certainly add this, is that NATO's mission never changed with the fall of the Soviet Union, which it
Good point.
continued to box in and undermine the Russian state. So
We became belligerent.
right. And with the steady creep of NATO eastward, that the last straw was Georgia, but also, and most recently, was Ukraine. You can't forget, and most people have to be reminded of this, there was a color revolution in Ukraine before the Maidan, which was the Orange Revolution in 2007. And so 7 years later, and that was unsuccessful because everybody knew it was the CIA, because where did all these Ukrainians get all these orange banners and hats and things? And then in 2014, you had the Maidan. And that's when Russia came in and took Crimea. They're not stupid.
Correct.
Any sophomore that has studied geopolitical foreign policy would know what was going on in that part of the world. But it's like talking about the Middle East again. It's like you just want to, Israel bad, Arabs good. Or in this instance, like with Kamala Harris, Russia, big country, bad. Vladimir Putin is bad. Ukraine, little country, good. I mean, this is so overly simplistic that I think the establishment thinks that we're retarded.
I don't think it's that the establishment thinks we're retarded. I think the establishment looks at us laymen and thinks we are naive and uneducated to the real trappings of power and what the elite want to see happen. And the reason for that is they've had a compliant media that has furthered their goals for them. And, Thomas Jefferson said, and I'm not quoting, not verbatim, but in order for our republic to survive, it will require an informed general public. And if the American people don't know what's happening in their name, I'm using air quotes, in their name, then bad things will happen. And that's, again, one of the most beautiful things about what's been taking place with Doge. The Democrats are running around saying, they want your Social Security number. They want your information. No, we're just being transparent by looking at where all the money goes. And they gave an example. Again, did the press report on it? No. But it was stated, I think it was stated by the press secretary. Right now, I don't think it's happening as of this week, but as recently as this week, there is a 150-year-old man still receiving a Social Security monthly check. Now, how is that possible? Well, who found that?
That's not
Rudy.
Yeah.
One of the brainiacs of Doge.
Yeah. I think it was Bigger Ball or Biggest Balls, or was it Big Balls? I don't know which one.
Big Balls. Big Balls.
The biggest balls of them all. And I talked about this today. And if you think, like voter fraud, that Medicaid or social services fraud is just one lady who's just trying to get more in her Social Security or her Medicaid check or whatever, or in her SNAP benefits, there are organized scams involving many people and large organizations that commit exorbitant amount of fraud using schemes.
That's right.
It's not just a little guy on the corner who fudged a name or a number on his application or whatever. That's not how it.
And I'll go further. I'll go further than that.
Yeah, there's
I'll
so
go
much
further than
there's
that.
so much money out there, like during the COVID
Right,
fraud, that there are
right.
people
I'll go
getting
further.
millions of dollars.
Right, right. And as I said, I'll go further than that. The real fraud, and it's hard for me to accept it, but it seems to be true based on what we have seen in the last 3 weeks. The real fraud is not the little scammer that sits on her couch and eats chocolate bonbons all day while getting 2, 3, or 4 SNAP cards and welfare checks from the federal government under different names. That, as horrible as that is, and I guarantee you there are billions and billions there, that's not the worst part. The worst part, as we found out last week, I think it's Sonny Holston's husband, who is an MD, has now been brought up on charges of medical fraud
Yeah.
and skimming off the top to the tune of millions of dollars. Well, that explains why she always had such a nice hairdo.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny that
You know?
that Elon Musk also brought up the word skim. And that's what I've
Mm-hmm.
used in my podcast for the past couple of weeks, is that it is the skim that, and it's not so much kickbacks as it is the skim. When money
Mm-hmm.
goes through an organization, they take an administrative fee, which could be most of the money before it goes anywhere
For
else.
all we know, that's
Yeah.
right.
So there's a lot going on there. I want to switch gears again and get into the border, and then talk a little bit about the future of the nominees that haven't been confirmed yet. So
Mm-hmm.
we're learning a lot about Tom Homan's plans. And I guess, is it you that mentioned that Alex Jones named the mole? I mean, was there a mole in the
Yeah.
FBI? So apparently,
There. Yeah.
there was a leaker in the FBI, because the FBI, as I also explained recently, is not an investigative bureau. It is an domestic intelligence agency, and they're more worried about sharing information, whether leaking or giving information to people that aren't supposed to have it, than they are investigating a federal crime. So, who do we have a
Correct.
name for this leaker?
Again, to be always as honest with you and your audience as I am, I only read the headline because it was 2:30 in the morning when X sent it to me, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to get this into Rudy's hands before I go to sleep.
Well,
And my day is busy. I didn't have a chance to read it yet.
No, there's no worry, because as I read that, it doesn't really matter who federal agent X is, who they have some sort of alliterative funny name that they're going to attach to this guy, whatever it is. We know, or
Yeah.
at least I know, that the Federal Bureau of Investigation is corrupt. I'm not saying that there aren't good people working for the FBI, but the FBI is
Most are.
right. The FBI has become the domestic secret police, and they shouldn't be involved in framing up people, whether it's January 6th or the Whitmer kidnapping or the first World Trade Center bombing, or going to Ibrahim Todajev's condo in Florida and FBI agent shooting the guy in the head during questioning. We shouldn't have this stuff happening. And so
Right.
people need to explain.
Or raiding Mar-a-Lago.
Right. Well, exactly. And that was more of a I don't want to say a legislative thing, but that was from the top down, asking people to defile a former president's residence, because that's really what it
Correct.
was, going through Melania's drawer and everything. So getting back to the fact is that there's FBI leakers that were telegraphing where ICE was going to conduct raids and what blue cities and stuff. And also, apparently, through Pam Bondi, we know that New York City had a tip line, apparently, that the New York State, the way they had things happening there with their illegal aliens, is that they were going to call the illegal aliens up once they find out who the ICE targets were. So the ICE would go into the registration, the motor voter for New York, and they would find their targets, And when this is witnessed by a New York representative, the New York representative would then tip off the people that they were targeting. So also in Los Angeles, this is happening in other blue cities. And apparently now the FBI is involved in helping the illegals. What what do you think the state of uh, the border, the illegal immigrants, the deportations is? We heard that Guantanamo Bay was uh, up legally. There was some challenge to that, but Arizona said just recently the Senate passed a bill that will allow an Arizona prison to be allocated for illegal immigrants. How do you think that fight is going with Tom Homan at the helm? And and then after that, I want to address some before we cut out here. Uh, RFK Jr. and Kash Patel.
Well, as far as Guantanamo Bay is concerned, in my opinion, that judge has overstepped their legal authority. They don't have the right or the authority or any type of power to determine national security measures. And eventually, whether it's this week or next week or possibly longer, it's going to be thrown out. It's going to be overturned. And so that is the reason why, whether it's Homan or whether it's Trump himself, no one is concerned about this TRO, because that's all it is a TRO. And temporary restraining orders don't go very far, very long. So I'm not really concerned about it. Eventually, it will be Guantanamo, and if it's not Guantanamo, that's fine. We have countries in the Caribbean that have said, we'll take them. And the reason why they're willing to take them is because they have the beds available, whether it's Bukele or whether it's some island nation. They have the beds, and we're willing to pay them what it would cost in American dollars to house them here in this country, which is a windfall for those Caribbean countries and Central American countries. So whether the judge thinks, they're doing some kind of good deed by saying, we're not going to let you use Guantanamo, like I said, it'll be overturned anyway. We have options open to us. That's why Homan's not really concerned. As far as the Republican-led Arizona legislature is concerned, I don't think that's going to happen unless you can get that idiot of a governor to go along with it. And I don't get the feeling Katie Hobbs will.
Yeah, I happen to agree with you. And I think it's funny that you mentioned that too, because Ilhan Omar was like, the judge has struck all these Trump things down. The judge has done that. And as you said, it's a TRO, which is basically an injunction, which that's not a final verdict. That's just putting a pause on something while they look into the case before they render a verdict overall. And I don't think
that's correct.
Any of these judges, if they're going to put their legal prowess into it, any of these local judges are going to die on the hill of saying that the executive doesn't have the power that the executive has.
Well, I'm not as sure about that as you are, and I'll tell you why. They have all swallowed the great Kool-Aid. They are all far left in not only their legal interpretation of law, but in their elitist attitude towards government. So, they're not ashamed of being smacked down like one of the judges was today or yesterday by the appeals court. Smacked them down and said, no, you don't have the authority to do that. So they're going to do whatever they can to, at the very least, slow down the breakneck speed of which Trump is getting things done. The bottom line is it ain't going to do him any good in the long haul, and that's the way we have to approach every one of these, what I call hiccups. it's a hiccup. It may not be what we want today, but we are going to get what we want through the courts because there are enough judges who read and interpret the law as written. They don't look at it as a living document. And so I'm not worried long term.
If the appeals go all the way to the Supreme Court, we'll win there for sure. So what about these nominations before we close out? We got Tulsi Gabbard, thank God. She has just been, she has been really getting me all hot and bothered, constantly seeing the clips of her testing out on the range with her staccato pistol, and now knowing that she's going to have a top post in the intelligence apparatus of the United States. She is my hero. I hope, along with Roger Stone, I hope that my early concerns were unfounded, that the fact that she was a World Economic Forum young leader, that those concerns will be allayed quite swiftly. I know she's a patriot. There's that little thing in the back of my mind that worries me. But as far as I'm concerned, a girl, a beautiful woman from Hawaii who was a Democrat,
who knows how to handle a gun,
that can compete tactically. She's on my good side. So I wish her all the best, and I think she's going to rise to the occasion for sure. So what about Cash?
She already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, she already has risen to the occasion. Now she's going to have a chance to shine. With regard to your concern with the WEF and the CFR, look, we were all, I don't want to call her young and stupid, but we were all naive at one time or another. I have a very dear friend of mine I went to high school with. You know him as an acquaintance of your better half. He was once a member of the John Birch Society. Now, there's nothing wrong with the John Birchers except some of the people within that organization. Okay, he saw the local organization for what they were, and it took him a while to come to light. But when he saw it, he said, "Perry, there are some scary people there," and I got out. And I think that's the way you have to look at Tulsi's status or former status with the WEF and the CFR. I'm not concerned about the past. I'm concerned with what she learned and how she sees the future. And what I see with regard to Tulsi right now, there are very few people I could see as DNR, DNI, as well as I see her right now. Yeah. She is a person who has sacrificed a great deal for this country. And one thing I learned about her and her family this weekend, of all things, she was on the Michael Savage show as recently as this past weekend. And Michael Savage actually has known her and her family because he lives in Hawaii. And he said to her how much he enjoyed talking with her and how patriotic her family, not just Tulsi, her family is. And she said, my parents are very conservative. She said the reason why she ran as a Democrat when she ran for Congress was because there is no Republican Party
in Hawaii,
for the most part, in Hawaii. Yeah. No. And so you have to put all of this together. And, proof is in the pudding, Rudy. We'll see, but I feel very good about her.
I feel good about her too, because you know why? Because of her stance on Snowden. Someone who had the stance on Snowden that she had and is now going to be head of intelligence. That's the person I want there. Okay, 30 seconds, Perry, on Kash Patel and RFK Jr.
Well, after watching his phenomenal job as not witness, but nominee, and how he obliterated people like Dick Durbin. And I'm trying to remember, there were two others that he took to the woodshed during his
Mark Warner
nomination hearing. It wasn't Warner. It was two of the Democrat women. Maybe Warren was one of them. I'm trying to remember. It's kind of irrelevant now.
Yeah.
I sent you text messages. This is my time, and his response to the senator who was trying to go harump, 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 his exact words to "It's my time now." His follow-up to him was, "Have at it."
Have at it. Yeah. Well,
so I'm not worried. I'm not worried because the biggest concern we had was Pete. We got him through, and if you look at the dominoes as they're falling, not one Democrat is going to vote for cash.
Yeah.
The only Republicans we have to worry about are the ones that have blood on their hands.
Yeah.
We're going to find out which ones those are if they don't vote for him.
The turtle didn't vote for Tulsi. He was the only Republican senator was Mitch McConnell, the former head of the Senate. Oh my God. I feel the same way. I think RFK Jr. has gone through closure and through committee. So I think that means they have the vote. So I think he's in. Hopefully that's the case. And Kash Patel, we'll see. He's not out of committee yet, so we'll see. Thanks for joining me tonight, Perry. Last words.
I couldn't agree with you more on that because, as far as I know, the Vice President of the United States is still overseas. So what does that tell you?
Look forward to talking to you next week, brother.
Yeah, we're going to continue to have a lot to talk about, Rudy.
Let's hope that's the case because it's going to be a great 4 years, and it's going to be, I think, the best 18 months, 24 months that we've seen in a long time in federal government.
Yeah. And to again come to the beginning of our conversation tonight, a lot of what Trump said on the campaign trail about the best is yet to come, and you watch and see it's going to be a golden era for the United States. Yeah. I felt it was just the salesman pitch, but go baby, go Team Trump.
Yeah. Next week we'll talk about tariffs. All right, thanks for joining me, Perry. I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great, Rudy. Take care now.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye. There goes Perry, episode 105 of Tuesdays with Perry on this Wednesday edition. Thanks for joining us tonight. Be sure to check out my daily podcast, Rudy's Revelation, Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. on Rumble live stream. And join us every Tuesday or Wednesday for Tuesdays with Perry. Have a great night. Peace out.